Hello, everyone. Today we're speaking about teenagers' mental health. Teenagers already face a wide range of challenges that can significantly impact their mental health and well-being, and these challenges have been added to or exacerbated by the pandemic. Research indicates that teenagers are now experiencing overwhelming stress, anxiety, and depression. In April 2021, the Hong Kong Medical Journal warned that parents, schools, and the wider community must put greater effort into monitoring teens' mental well-being. Joining us today to speak about the challenges that teenagers face and what we can all do to support them is IMI clinical psychologist Karen Lau. Karen is experienced in treating adolescents and adults who struggle with anxiety disorders, chronic self-harm, high emotional dysregulation, and borderline personality disorder. Karen, thank you for joining me today. From your observations, what are the major challenges facing teenagers today?
Thank you so much, Angela, for your wonderful introduction. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that you're taking the time to wanting to understand more about the challenges that teenagers are facing nowadays, especially within the context of the COVID pandemic. And I would say that on top of everything that teenagers might already be struggling with, such as all these adjustment issues and changes that they have to adapt to, whether it's biological changes, hormones leading to their fluctuations in emotions, and them trying to figure out, who they are, their identity. These are all regular and normal experiences that they are bound to go through. But on top of that, just like you said, these struggles might be exacerbated by the whole COVID situation, such as the shift from them having a lot more time, in person, whether it's, for learning or for leisure. Now everything's been shifted to online. So when that's the case, teenagers are being faced with a higher exposure to all these activities, whether it's being on social media, which would lead to a lot more comparisons. And they would be more focused on the fact that, whether or not I'm accumulating enough likes or followers on these various platforms. And, that could lead to them slowly neglecting that in real life, they have so many other strengths and qualities to be proud of and appreciative of, whether it's, their academic excellence or how passionate they are in all these hobbies and activities in real life, or how amazing they are as human beings, in treating their friends and loved ones. And yeah, all of those could be easily pushed to the side because of that hyper focus on activities online. And of course, there's this phenomenon of cyberbullying, which has always been around us, but then again being made worse by the situation, because now it's basically a 24/7 phenomenon. It does not stop when school is primarily online, and then there's just no distinction between being at school or it's your own time where you can use the computer. So teenagers can be more vulnerable and susceptible to cyberbullying throughout the day, way into the night, and then waking up to some of these messages. So to know that all in all, teenagers are, they're in a situation, a very unique one, where there are all these unprecedented phenomenons, and they just have to learn how to navigate through it. And again, amongst that, this whole theme of rejection, this is the time of their lives to learn about this inevitable process of rejection, whether it's applying to colleges or in different social groups. It's only natural that we all face one way or another this experience of, knowing that, we don't just get to join, a group or just achieve something just because we want it, and to learn how to be resilient towards a situation, but then again, being exacerbated online because it's a very quick kind of channel to receive those sort of rejections. And sometimes those rejections are coming from people who don't know half the things that they're doing or who they are. But then just because, again, this platform is just very convenient, very quick to jump to some of these conclusions for them, again, because they're at this stage of forming their identities, they're left even more vulnerable than usual.
You mentioned resilience. What can teenagers do to boost their own resilience and protect their mental well-being, especially with, as you say, it's 24/7 bombardment of social media, connections with people, and it must be quite difficult, or it is quite difficult for teenagers to know how to separate themselves from the 24/7 challenges that they face.
Absolutely. I would actually recommend all of us to pay attention to the 5 S's, I would call them. So, instead of what we commonly know as having, the adult or the parents to sort of introduce a timetable, having them to kind of when do you stop being online or playing computer games or chatting on social media and so on. Rather, encourage them to establish a sense of agency through them taking the lead to structure, so the first S, and control their time online. Yeah, so allowing them to be the ones to design their timetable. When do they be online? And then also designing some time for their so-called self-care activities. And those could be their hobbies and their interests that, maybe before this whole COVID situation hijacked their routine that they would used to enjoy. So really protect the time to designate a schedule for their self-care activities, second S. So that could include, baking at home, drawing, reading books, taking a walk in a park. And while we're doing so, the next S would be the idea of utilizing our 5 senses. So instead of, again, maybe it could be an activity that is just, whether it's on a screen and so on, it could be, checking in with what do our 5 senses enjoy. And that would include, our sense of smell, touch, taste, sight, hearing. So to make sure that when we are choosing some of these activities, we are engaging our senses. The next technique would be to practice self-compassion. So the next S, that is of utmost importance, especially for teenagers during this time when they are already receiving perhaps quite a lot of suggestions, comments, whether it's online and even offline from their families and loved ones, out of goodwill and love and care towards them, but still it could be very overwhelming. So it's important for them to exercise this self-compassion, kind and empathetic sort of lens whenever they are going through a hard time, especially, or when things aren't going as smoothly as expected, to remind themselves that there's a reason to why things aren't going that well. For example, the fact that, during the last test, I wasn't in a season of this tournament. Therefore, I had more time to study. But then since I have to balance the tournament and my studies and maybe all these other issues happening in family, of course, understandably, I might need to compromise the time to attend to my studies. And therefore, the result, there's this, difference in my marks and my grades. So to really emphasize the fact that we need to actively practice that compassionate perspective towards ourselves. And the final S would be to cultivate the norm to share their negative emotions. And I would believe that this applies to all of us to, get used to the narrative to not only talk about what we want to celebrate, but also to express what might not be going as well as expected, as wanted, and to make sure that we have those people in our lives that we feel safe enough to share some of these negative emotions with, whether it be, our parent or someone at school, like the counselor, to make sure that we get used to having this outlet to express what's not going well instead of allowing the negative emotions to bottle up and, reaching a point where it's more overwhelming than needed.
Thank you so much for sharing. As a parent myself of a teenage daughter, I can really resonate with what you've shared. And I love the framework that you've shared. And I really like the idea of checking into your five senses. That's something that I can easily share. And I think many of us as parents can easily share with our children and allow them to take ownership of their mental well-being and think about engaging their five senses. It's very easy for teenagers to understand and work with. Also, as a parent myself, I understand that there's a lot that we can do to support our children's well-being. What would you say that parents, schools, and the wider community can do to better support teenagers' mental well-being now and always?
Yeah, this is such an important question, Angela. And I would say now for parents, again, coming from a very understanding place, parents are already under a lot of pressure to be expected to know what to do, to know how to react, coming up with all the perfect solutions to help their teenagers. But we do want to challenge this perspective because for a lot of parents, it might be their first time handling a teenager. It might be their first time being on the other side, witnessing what's going on to someone who's going through their adolescence, even though, we might have been through it before. So to know that instead of focusing on the fact that we are supposed, language of suppose or should or must act a certain way as parents to be this not only safe haven, but being able to come up with the perfect solutions, we want to shift this perspective to focusing on the active listening side of things, which involves, being there with your teen with an open mind, listening to their problems, their struggles with a non-judgmental view. And that truly is one of the best things that we can do for them, because a lot of the times we struggle with the fact that there's no quick solution to whatever they're struggling with. But then for them to have that safe space and time to be listened to be heard, can be very restorative and energizing for them to face the next day. And again, knowing that they could come back to a non-judgmental safe space for them to share, whatever they want to talk about, would be such a reassuring sort of cycle for them to keep trying and keep going. On top of that, I would also recommend that, we all dedicate that one-on-one time with our teenagers. So instead of relying on, spending time as a family together with those amazing outings or meals, rather we want to, again, safeguard a time scheduled in every week to make sure that we have that platform where we could just sit down, maybe just over a cup of drink, to talk about how things have been going, and just simply asking questions like, how are you, how have you been feeling, how are things going, again utilizing the active listening rather than focusing on the fact that we have to be there to provide them with a solution or telling them exactly what to do. Yeah. And apart from the individual level of parents doing that for our teenagers, of course, I believe that as a wider community, more work should be done in destigmatizing the topic of mental health. We know that it's just for a fact that in Asian societies that it's just more of a taboo to talk about mental health. But then, unfortunately, this sort of entrenched culture can be quite detrimental to a lot of those people who are suffering on a more severe level. And we know that, by destigmatizing, we can really remove a lot of what we've been talking about, the judgment on a societal level, and eventually, trickling down to families and then individuals. So, a lot has to be done in terms of allowing this topic to be more open and more accepted, and providing individuals or groups with more support that could be very helpful, whether it be individual psychotherapy, just more resources friendly available to the wider community could be very helpful in boosting the mental well-being for all of us. And as again, as a community, like what we've talked about on the lines of being non-judgmental, it's important that when it comes to the narrative, when talking about teenagers, for us to not assume that adolescents are being difficult for the sake of it, but rather understanding it coming from the point of view, like what we've discussed, that they are going through a time where, naturally speaking, there are a lot of changes that they have to adapt to. And when we are going through changes, it's only natural for us to be confused, to be struggling to display behaviors that might not be very convenient to the people around us. But just to bear in mind that they're not doing it on purpose, but rather they themselves are the ones already struggling the most. So to, again, take on the lens of being compassionate, empathetic towards these displays, this display of behaviors that might not be too convenient to us, but then again, with empathy in place, we could be a lot more motivated to come up with support to continuously trying to help them.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. It's very common for teenagers to disappear into their rooms or to lash out. So how, as a parent, does someone know the difference between normal teen behavior and a mental health teen issue? What are some of the warning signs that parents and guardians should look out for that would indicate that a teenager needs professional support?
Absolutely, Angela. A lot of the times, what we know about teenagers or what we see about them would be these behaviors, exactly what you described, that lashing out, just being in their rooms, not wanting to interact. At the same time, a warm reminder here that if we review on our lives and our own time spent, we do notice that one way or another, all of us would have experienced those moments before of just feeling more heated, of wanting to express ourselves in a way that might be more outward and even affecting the people around us negatively. And then also to just wanting to be alone and not socialize that much. So to know that all these expressions and emotions are part of the normal human experience, that it is only natural for all of us, including teenagers, to go through times of feeling negative, and there's no way for us to get rid of that side of the emotions. Rather, it's about learning how to react and cope in a way that could help us feel better again. So I would recommend parents and the wider community, all of us, to pay attention to diff, to kind of detect whether or not our teenagers need that further support from a professional. So the first one would be duration. So noticing how long has it been since they've been displaying that more negative or extreme sort of expression in how they're being upset or their sadness or their anger. If we're noticing that this is lasting for up to 2 weeks or more, then that is a sign for us to start paying attention to their state, and also to bear in mind that anytime now we could just accompany our teenager to check in with a mental health professional just to see what we can do to further support our teen. And the next idea would be the intensity, the I within the diff. So to notice how intense has it been. So for example, if overnight our teenager is starting to talk about wanting to harm themselves, or the idea about death, talking about why are so many people dying? For example, maybe it's better that I also follow their footsteps, or that's something I want to do as well. Then we do want to, again, not dismiss this piece of information, but to take it seriously and to notice that that would be the point of, again, allowing a professional to intervene and to support us further. And when it comes to the F in diff, it would be noticing the functioning of your child, which would include, how are they able to attend school, all these social events, going about their daily routine as they would. And if we notice that they are starting to unable, and I do want to highlight the word unable, because we are not assuming that they're doing it on purpose, but rather a mental health issue is starting to cripple their functioning, then we're noticing that, they can no longer wake up to go to school anymore. They just want to be in their rooms, hide under their blankets. Then we want to start, again, involving a professional to further support us. So again, when it comes to some of the more severe topics, like when we mention the intensity, I do have to emphasize that as a rule of thumb, to not undermine the seriousness of sometimes when teenagers might be talking about whether it's self-harm or the theme of just death or ending their lives, and to take it seriously by, again, listening patiently, and then to gently suggest to them, why not we check in with a professional, someone, to see how can we work on some of these thoughts or how we're feeling, and to, again, allow the professional to further support us on this.
Thank you so much, Karen. So to differentiate regular teen behavior from behavior that indicates that a child is struggling with mental health challenges, we're looking at diff. So to differentiate duration, intensity, and functioning. Thank you so much, Karen. That's a really impactful way to describe it and to give parents an indication of what they really do need to look out for to support their child's health and well-being. So thank you for sharing your insights and guidance. How can viewers connect with you to seek support if they, as parents or their teens, need support for their mental health?
Thank you, Angela. I'm so appreciative of this time that we have to discuss about the very important topic of teenagers during this unprecedented pandemic times. In order for me to support all of you further, please feel free to reach out to me through the clinic IMI. I actually provide that 20 minutes free check-in, even though it's not a consultation time. It's a very helpful time, I hope, for me to provide you with, a better insight into whether or not you would need that further support, or maybe it's a time for us to just sit and wait to observe further. So again, it's just a time for me to give you some of the pointers towards maybe what might be the next step that's best for you or your child.
Thank you, Karen. Those 20 minutes sound invaluable to help parents know that they're not alone either in determining if their children need support or if their children are going through regular teen behavior. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you to all of our viewers for your commitment to your teenagers' mental health and well-being. Thank you and goodbye.